everyone.
Welcome to Happiness Hunch. We are Lynn and Mike, and on this channel we talk about the hunches that we experience in life and how acting on those hunches turns out. And today's hunch is all about beauty. Early on in our marriage, we had a hunch that beauty is really important. And so our family mission involves beauty, looking for it, enjoying it, creating it wherever we can. It's a big part of who we are. And so today we thought we would talk on this topic. And because it's such a large topic, we thought we would focus on texture. So texture, what is texture? Texture, Mike's touching my sweater, is kind of the structure, the feel, the overall appearance of something. And often repetition and pattern are involved in texture. And I wore this sweater today because I thought it was a really good example. In the sweater, I have a huge cable going down the front of my sweater. And then I have these like 4 smaller cables going down the sides here. And so it just creates this texture. But another layer of texture in this one sweater is the fact that it's fuzzy. And so the fuzziness of the sweater is another layer of texture. And on top of all that, the sweater is marbled black and white. And that marbling provides another layer of texture. So this sweater just provides a good example of texture. And if you were to look in my closet, you would see I don't have a ton of patterns. Most of my patterns are in scarves. But I love texture. So you would see several different black tops, all with different textures. So they're very, very beautiful. You know, they're subtle, but there's a lot of beauty there. So I think that this...
If I do say so myself.
Are you making fun of me? I'm sorry.
Just like the way that came out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how that sounded, but...
No, it didn't sound bad. I was just making a joke.
Oh.
Go on.
Okay. Anyway. My love for texture, I think, came from my childhood. As I've said, I think in another video, I grew up on a 60-acre farm. And when you're a kid on a 60-acre farm, you get bored. And what do you do when you're bored? You go out to the field, because where else can you go? So I would walk our 60 acres all the time. And I came to see cornstalks as these amazing things, because you'd start with this tiny little piece of corn, you know, that would be on my dinner plate. But a tiny little piece of corn could turn into this tall green stalk with this fuzzy tassel at the top. And then it would grow corn, and those individual ears of corn would have these fuzzy little tops too. And I noticed all that, and I noticed similar things with the soybeans and with the wheat. And then when fall would come, all of it would get kind of crispy, you know, and it would change colors. And I was always taking all of this in, and I was amazed by this. And by the time I could drive, what did I want to do? Of course, I wanted to not walk around in the fields, but I really took to hiking. I love to go on hikes. And so what happens when you go on a hike? Well, on the ground, you have rocks that provide texture. There's different grasses and weeds and mosses. And then the trees are just a whole nother realm of texture with all the different types of bark. Every tree has its own bark that provides a unique service to that tree. And then leaves, you know, the different overall shapes of leaves and the different veining of leaves. And some leaves have a softer feel to them. So there's just all these textures, and I really grew to love texture. And then in our home, Mike knows that I decorate with texture. It's just where I start. Every designer, I think, focuses in on maybe a different element of design. Some people are really into lines or shapes or light. So my thing is texture, and I'll try to flip up some pictures here. But in our main room, I have some textures that I really focus on. One is a basket weave. I've always loved baskets. So you're talking about basically a straw-like fiber that's woven together to form a basket. And I love baskets because they're very practical. They can serve the purpose of holding things for you. But in our room, I have several baskets arranged on a wall. And so that arrangement itself is texture. And then the baskets provide texture. And then in another area, I have And I have these plants, these 6 plants, and each of these plants are in a basket that's woven. So there's that, and then it repeats again too in our hanging lights. We have some hanging lights over our island area, and it's the same straw-like fibers, and they're woven as well. So there's that, and then one of my very favorite things. Can you guess what it is?
No. You have so many favorite things.
Think Joanna.
Oh, shiplap.
Shiplap.
Yeah.
When I first saw shiplap, let me tell you, this texture woman fell in love with Joanna Gaines. And when she unveiled shiplap, you know what's so neat though about Texas is that it's in their houses. So she would just find it, clean it up, and paint it. Well, you can't do that in Pennsylvania. And I was
as easily.
But
you can.
I did incorporate it. So what I did instead, and we really didn't have enough money to do a full room of shiplap or even a whole wall of shiplap. So I'll try to put up some pictures, but I basically did a fireplace made of shiplap. Our dining area has shiplap for a backdrop, and then I used it again on our island. So repeating it, you definitely come into the room and get the feel of shiplap, even though it's not everywhere. We also used wood, so we have hardwood floors, and I have rough wood on the walls. So we have that, provides a lot of warmth and lots of texture there. We also I have this corrugated metal backsplash. I wanted stone, but stone was like getting up towards $700-800. And we decided to, at the end of our decorating budget, to spend $30 on corrugated metal. But it kind of provides a neat texture. So it's kind of cool, and it's very different. Not many people are using it. There is some on Pinterest if you're interested. But so we did that, and that, of course, that look is sort of repeated in appliances. And we have these Pennsylvania Dutch plates on the wall where the baskets are.
Pewter.
And then we have these pewter Spanish plates. These are very authentic plates, and I love that authenticity factor in these plates. And lastly, I also use black metal and iron.
A lot of black metal.
I love black iron. I'm in love with it. So we use it in our light fixtures. We have it. Our countertop is black granite, but it's rough. It's got a texture to it too. And where else did I use the black metal? Oh, knobs on our kitchen cabinets. The knobs on the kitchen cabinets are bumpy and have a rough, kind of gritty texture to them too. So, I just love texture, and I use it a lot.
She loves texture.
I use it a lot, and I think that texture really gives us some insight into beauty. It's a special feature.
Can I?
Jump in.
Thanks. I wanted to say a couple things.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, we'll talk about color another time in another video. So, but one of the things that was, when Lynn and I first got married, well, let me go back and tell a little bit of my story. So, I grew up in a family that did a lot of gardening and landscaping, and I worked as a landscape person on a huge estate for about 8 years. And so I was really into the world of texture outside and plants. And what was nice about not growing up on, but working on this estate for all these years is I could sort of pretend like this was my place. And I had an unlimited budget as far as I'm concerned because I was working for someone who had a lot of money. And I learned a lot. The person I worked for ran. She had her own architectural magazine. She's a very artistic woman, and she did great impersonation of different plants. And I learned a lot of things about
I wish I would have gotten to see this.
How different plants make a statement, and they have their own thing going on. So, and she had all these faces and these little expressions that she used, and it was quite humorous actually. I used to just crack up. She would start out using the Latin name of the plants, and then I was like, I have no idea what you want me to work on today. And then she's like, the dudes that look like this and have this little, and then I would go. I knew exactly what she was talking about. Then I'd go out there, and I'd work on those beds in those different areas. But there were a lot of layers. She did a lot with repetition. So she'd have whole areas that were all one row of plants that were big and they made a big statement. She would layer her borders, so they would start at a lower height and go up higher and higher and higher, and everything coordinated. I mean, the colors coordinated. There was always something related to a season, so in every part of her yard, something was always blooming and making a show, as she would say, during the season. And, it was just, I almost actually, at one point, I almost went into landscape architecture. That was the other career choice I looked at in my 20s besides theology. And actually, Mrs. Reed was the one who told me to go get a degree in theology and not architecture, because she really thought that that's where my passion was. But I really loved gardening. So early on in our marriage, it was interesting because Lynn and I made this agreement.
Oh, yeah.
And this agreement was that she would have the final say on everything inside, and I would have the final say on everything outside.
Now we have to agree on the budget, though.
And yeah, we have to agree.
Can't just go
we agree on the budget, right? Which has always been fairly small, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we because early on in our marriage, we were constantly going around and around and around, and we had different tastes. I think in the beginning, I was much more of a classic antique-y kind of person, and you always described your style as sort of old world. But really, what it came down to was she didn't want to decorate with pictures and historical memory. Like there's not a lot of.
We do have pictures.
We have some.
We have pictures.
We have a few.
See, there's one right here. See, right
here. we have some, but compared to what I was used to, my idea, you decorate on the inside with art, and then we had different color palettes. It's another fancy term. Like I like certain color schemes. I'm more of a winter person. She's more of a fall, and also more. You like more earth tones. I liked maybe things that were, I don't want to say brighter, but just not necessarily sort of neutral earth tones. And so we went back and forth, round and around and around, and
I do love red, and someday I'm going to have a red room in my house.
She has a black wall. That's black.
Yeah.
But
red looks so good up against it, right?
It's actually interesting. It's kind of a midnight black, blue, whatever.
Black.
But at any rate, I think the thing is we had to, just because we both have this artistic side to us, that we had to agree that, what you want to do on the inside is what we're going to do.
But we do talk
what
to
I
each
want
other.
to do.
It's not like we don't talk to each other.
I know. We'd have to apologize. We're fine. So I lost my train of thought there.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my backstory about, just with landscaping and texture and why it's important to me. I guess where I was going was that we had some disagreements on the inside, and I didn't quite understand why she wanted to always decorate with texture. And not so much images is a good way to put it. There are some. I mean, we have pictures of our family and all that. But compared to other people I know, we don't have a lot of that, and it was always a sore point. But over time, I came to appreciate the fact that, in a sense, what Lynn was always doing was trying to bring the outdoors into the house. And I guess, to get to the finish line here for today's video, what's the deeper happiness hunch that we've kind of unveiled or uncovered in this process of decorating? And that is, I think one thing is just that beauty is very complex because it's very textured, and there's not one way to capture or to express beauty. But we've also realized that there's some foundational principles to beauty, which is you want to, as much as possible, imitate nature. Again, we talked about this in our last video, the importance of nature, but Lynn does a beautiful job of bringing the outdoors in, and through craftsmanship and things like that, we can shape and we can shape reeds into a basket. We can take stone and turn it into a countertop. You can take beautiful wood with grain and texture in it, and you can turn it into a floor, and all these things. And there's something very, very human and very natural about that. And I think something that I've always realized is that if we surround ourselves as human beings too much with too many synthetic products that we make that are trying to be simulations of natural things, we do get, it's cold, and we lose a sense of our humanity. Mm-hmm. And I also think we lose touch with God. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you cover over a wood floor, for example, with vinyl, you know, you might get a cool pattern, but why not use tile, right? It's expensive. We realize that. That's why we went to a smaller house. We wanted a lot smaller house so that we could actually afford to have natural materials on the inside of it, because we know it's expensive. There's also the value of trying to do repurposed stuff. We found over the years, we've been able to find relatively inexpensive substitutes, or just find, you know, secondhand stuff, or, you know, thrift stores or whatever.
So many of those places now.
So what looks oftentimes very expensive when we, you know, show you some photographs is actually not as expensive as you think. You have to bargain shop. Yeah. But the idea of just being closer to the things that God has created and then incorporating those into your environment, I think has a deeply humanizing effect on our emotions. It brings more peace to the soul, more calm. We just naturally resonate more than we do with things that are purely artificial and synthetic. You know, an imitation wood isn't just going to have the same effect on our senses and our psychology as natural wood does, as an example. So, anything else you wanted to add to close up?
Well, I just would say, too, I also just want to, again, encourage our children in raising a family, draw them into nature. There's so much peace in nature, and there's a lot of joy there, and life can be hard and can be rough, and so there's a lot of solace that we can find in nature. So, yeah, I did want to bring that into the house, just to kind of spread that experience, you know, in our home, so we can experience it all the time instead of just when we go outside. And here in Pennsylvania in the winter, well, you don't get a lot of outside because it's so cold. There's some, you know, but anyway, so the family component of it and just raising our kids and gifting them with this desire for nature is another component, I would say, to all the effort that's put into both texture and just decorating in general. Yeah. So, if you have a favorite room in your house, I would totally love to see it in the comments. Or a redo that you recently did, like you redid a room, I would love to see it. Hear what elements you work with when you're doing your home. That would be really fascinating to take a look at. So, if you like this video, please like it. Please subscribe and come back. Really enjoy. So, until next time.
Follow your hunches.
Follow your hunches. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Bye.